I am Adeola James, Professor of Literature. I'm going to talk to you today about my identity and women's power for change. First of all, when we think about identity, who we are, in this consideration, I think about the influences that shaped my life. My parents were teachers, and I think they valued education even in their time. My parents had 6 children, 5 of us were women, were girls. Then I am the oldest of these 6, with 4 siblings who are girls and only 1 brother. I remember that when my parents were sending me to England, many of their friends discouraged them. They thought it was a waste of money to educate a woman, a girl who will end up in somebody's kitchen. But my parents were visionaries, and they also felt that a girl given the right education and the opportunity can do as well as a boy and can influence the world. I'm very grateful for that, because that has influenced my own approach to life. And as life will have it, I myself am a mother of 4 girls and only 1 son. And all my children, I think, can vouch to the fact that there was no difference. We realize and act in our daily lives the idea of women's power. My identity as an African was fully forged when I lived in Tanzania during the early independence. Tanzania became the hub of liberation movement, and it was a great privilege and learning to be there to see all the liberation movements from South Africa, from West Africa, from Angola, the Frelimo, and so on. And women took very active part in these movements. I remember we used to demonstrate, we used to go around and make people conscious of the fact that what Nkrumah said, that unless every part of Africa is liberated, none of us was free. That was a great lesson that I learned there, to the effect that I am an African and not just belonging to any particular part of Africa. The other lesson I learned in Tanzania, and an apt lesson, was that the few of us who had a higher education were privileged. And as we are privileged as servants of the people, because it's the people's money that educated us. And as servants, we had to serve them. This is a lesson that we have to learn to change our society, that we have the responsibility, we are the ones who have the responsibility to change the approach, the attitude. Educated people cannot lord it over anybody, but they are the servants of the people. My stay in Tanzania also influenced me in a very precious way, in that I got to meet and to know Mwalimu Nyerere, Julius Nyerere. And I had a chance later on in the 90s, when he came to Guyana, to discuss with him about the direction in which Africa was going. And he believed that though our world seemed to be under siege, in that there were problems with our economy, and our children are rushing to live in the United States or in England, and in places where we may not really be welcome. How can we stop this? He pointed out that Africans are used to struggle, and that at that phase of our struggle, the rest of Africa was waiting on Nigeria to put her acts together. In East and Central Africa, they were already working on that. I think this is still happening. We are still in the process of putting our acts together. My identity as an African makes me very aware of this, and makes me think every day about the way in which we can move beyond servants of the rest of the world. But we can also be people whose contributions are significant and are recognized. When I look at my identity and at my life, I see that there are lots of struggles for women. In fact, this I realized even before I got married, and I did not wish to have daughters, because it seemed like life is too difficult for women. But of course, now I've changed my mind, because I realize that we are the ones who run the world. The statement is still true that the hands that rock the cradle rule the world. We raise our children, giving them the right values. We have struggled at the workplace. For example, myself and my husband he started teaching at the university a year before me. Within 10 years, he was a full professor. But that was a lifelong struggle for me before I was finally recognized. For women, our family comes first. And the world actually is like a collection of men's club, wherever you are. Whether at work, whatever profession you are in. I remember storming out of an academic board meeting at the University of Guyana at the time when we were selecting people, academics, to represent the academic board in various meetings, in various groups. And all these men only nominating one another. Of course, that is not acceptable. We have to continue to struggle to see that there is justice, that women get their due. It is true that we also hear that behind every successful man is a strong woman. We're not talking about success in public life alone, but living a meaningful, purposeful life and living legacy of honesty, hard work, commitment to service, whether at home or abroad, wherever we are, for our children. We may have problems holding on to our profession, but we are the ones who will bring about the change. It is absolutely important to train our children to have a particular profession. When I look back to my mother's generation, my own generation, and even our children's generation, there's need to be strong. Focus on a profession through which you can find meaning and purpose for your life, as well as serve. For me, teaching has been in my blood, and it is through the study of literature and the teaching of literature that I have interacted with the world and found my purpose. I worked on a book of poetry for liberation movement, and I also published a book on African women writers, and another book on Papua New Guinean women writers. I have been privileged to teach in many parts of the world, starting from the University of Ife, and then Tanzania, Zambia, and later on to Papua New Guinea, and finally in Guyana, which is the country, which is my husband's country. I have found meaningful life after retirement. The statement is true that retired but not tired. It's important to keep active mentally, physically, and emotionally. As women, we are the support of our families, of our homes. It's good to also see women in high places. Women are in the UN, in the World Bank, women scientists. Many of my contemporaries are well known, and we can continue to make our influence felt in the world by the way that we interact with one another, with others, and by keeping alive. As T.S. Eliot says, we need to be alive in our own time. You must be alive in your own time. I said that it's important to keep an active mentally, physically, and emotionally. Mentally, I am completing online a doctoral degree in biblical studies at Trinity Seminary, Indiana. I started after I retired from teaching at the University of Guyana in 2004. It has blessed my life immensely. Physically, I walk at least 3 miles a day, 6 days a week. All those muscles that want to feel stiff after 75 years of good service are not allowed to. I think they are happy when I stretch them and keep them strong. Health and the need to get regular annual physical examination is very important. My negligence to do this nearly cost me my life when I was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2007. After age 50, it is important for women to do mammogram for breast cancer, pap smear for cervical cancer, colonoscopy for colon cancer. I had no symptoms. I was too self-confident and neglected mandatory checkups. My daughter, who is a physician, used to quarrel with me about this, asking, why did you send me to a medical school when you don't believe in doctors? Well, the time came when I was feeling some discomfort and I had to listen to her. I had my first colonoscopy at age 71 and the cancer was diagnosed. Had I had that procedure 20 or 10 years earlier, polyps that developed into cancer later would have been removed and I would have avoided going through risky surgery and chemotherapy. Women need to take care of ourselves to live fully and bless our family and all that we come in contact with. Our influence for change in the world can be limitless. The road ahead is still tough, in spite of the fact that we are living in the 21st century. The struggle at workplace and the struggle for women begins even at birth, because even today, some parents, either the husband or the wife, is unhappy when the second daughter is born, and some even have the audacity to tell the wife, blaming her that she must not continue what happens in her original home. Maybe she comes from a family of 4 girls, and that's sort of insult. We have to appreciate that women are human beings. They are the second half of creation of the world, and when we rob them of their power, we're only limiting the power of our world and of our whole existence. Women have to fight. The fight seems to have no end. When we talk about political struggle, we say that the struggle continues. In terms of women's identity and women's influence for change in the world, I will say the struggle continues. But we must remember that our power for change, our power to change attitude is limitless, and we can get that power also emotionally by being strong and being close to one another.